Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your off-season version of the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion for the 15th of December. Happy April to you out there. If you're east of the Mississippi, it's pretty crazy. Very warm weather as we have moved through December. That'll change for a couple of days, and then it's going to warm back up again. I'm going to show you that as I go over the lower 48 weather and potential impacts. But first, a couple of things that we watch as we move towards the 2016 hurricane season. Of course, the very first discussion and outlook was issued by Dr. Phil Klotzbach from Colorado State University last week, indicating anywhere from 25 to 35% chance of basically a pretty busy season next year. Lower chances, he believes, of there being a below normal or a normal or an average season. And it's basically because of this right here. This was the culprit in keeping, and a positive culprit for homeowners along the coast and visitors to our coastal areas. If you like to see hurricanes in the Atlantic, this was a bad sign for you this year, because this is the very warm, what we call El Nino situation, or state of the ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation. And it reached its peak probably in the last couple of weeks, now starting to cool off just ever so slightly, day by day, week by week, as the atmosphere changes and realigns. This will begin to diminish, and I'm going to show you some of what that should look like in the next couple of slides here in a moment. And then that should open up the Atlantic next year to be a lot busier than it has been. It's not a guarantee. It's kind of like I wrote on my blog recently. You know, you can have a college basketball team, a pro team, football, baseball, doesn't matter. And you start the season off, even the preseason, looks like it's going to just be loaded for bear with talent. You know, an NFL team can have a wonderful hot quarterback, all the perfect wide receivers, defensive linemen, you name it. And then the season starts and maybe the QB has an injury and he's out for a few games. Or just, you know, the coach has issues, maybe somebody gets in trouble. You just never know. So just because something might happen doesn't mean that it has to happen. And even though these signs that we're seeing, and that is a very warm Atlantic coming up, it looks like, and then this fading away here, the El Nino, that doesn't guarantee that next year will be busy, but the larger puzzle pieces should be in place. So we'll see how that works out. One of those puzzle pieces, we can look at the subsurface anomalies. Clearly you can see the very warm water here in the top layer of the tropical Pacific Ocean, but then down below, an equally impressive area of colder than average water starting to stake its claim in the tropical Pacific. Granted, it's fairly far underneath the warm El Nino, but as the pressure pattern changes, this will start to spread more to the east, and it'll erode this warm water away. And we'll start to see this fade out, especially as we get into January and beyond. And in fact, most of the computer models agree. This is the early December Climate Prediction Center International Research Institute consensus models of the probabilistic ENSO forecast. And you can see that, you know, for the next few months, near 100% probability of El Nino. But after that, it looks like the decline really starts to begin. And by the time we get into springtime, El Nino is really on its way out, and the probabilities of a neutral pattern starting to set up more. And an even a little bit greater than 30% probability, or chance is a good way to say it, of La Nina showing up by July, August, September. This would get us into the peak of the hurricane season. And I think more importantly is the fact that the El Nino only showing up at 20% by the time we get to this very important time period of July, August, September of next year. Now, the different models that forecast the demise of the El Nino are also showing a very warm Atlantic here, tropical Atlantic, getting nice and toasty compared to average. And then here is the coming La Nina, perhaps. Look at that. There's a cold area in the middle of where it's so warm right now, a complete reversal. And this is the May, June, July time frame. This is an ensemble forecast. Lots of these out there. I just wanted to show you an example of what this one is saying, or predicting, I guess is the best way to put it. Very warm Atlantic with a cooling Pacific. So there you go. I think that it makes sense that the outlook for next hurricane season is one that would suggest anyway that it could be quite busy. Now moving to lower 48 weather. Again, if you're east of the Mississippi here, even east of basically the Continental Divide, it's nice and warm and storm-free for the most part. Winter storm watches and warnings, though, up here in the Rockies and parts of the upper Midwest, as the trough is out west and the ridge is in the east for now. But that's going to change. I want to show you that in the 500 millibar pattern. This is what it looks like currently. Here's that trough in the west, parts of the Great Basin and the Rockies, and again, a little area of the upper Midwest east of this trough line, over Indiana, parts of Michigan, still pretty warm, but boy, you get west of there and it's rather stormy and cold. But over here in the east especially, all the way up into New England, just as warm and even muggy as it could possibly be for December, mid-December now. So going out over the next several days, this is valid tomorrow morning. So Wednesday morning, the ridge holding strong here in the east. This storm system literally butting up against it, not making much progress. Going out 72 hours. Then we start to see a little bit of a change here. The trough tries to make some inroads towards the east with a little bit more ridging out west. This is really just resetting the stage out west for a very busy time of it come Christmas, and I'll show you how that evolves here in a moment. Moving out into time another couple of days. This is 5 days out, and that energy goes out to sea very quickly here, leaving more ridging starting to develop over the east and the western Atlantic as the heights begin to fall again out west, as more and more stormy weather rides off the Pacific, coming into California, the Pacific Northwest, the Rockies, the Sierra Nevada. You all need the snowpack for sure out there, and the West Coast could certainly use the rainfall, just not too much of it at once, please. Well, sometimes we don't have control over that. Finally, looking out at day 7 here, this is valid next Tuesday morning. Look at this ridge developing over the western Atlantic here, sort of a broad trough sitting over much of the nation's western 2/3, while the 1/3 basking in the sunshine here in the east will really be enjoying that towards Christmas. In fact, if we go on out even farther into time, or further I should say, I always get that mixed up. 216 hours, whatever it is, 9 days out. The upper level pattern, that's what it looks like in September sometimes. The ridge might be a little further to the north and west, or farther. See, I screwed that one up. But when you're talking time, it's further. When you're talking distance, I believe it's farther. But, like how far is it? So farther north. Anyhow, grammatical corrections aside, this is what we normally would see in September, or especially October. But folks, this is valid early in the morning hours after sunrise on Christmas Eve, 2015. Big trough out west, nation's midsection, ridging in the east over the Atlantic too. That's a classic Bermuda high, by the way. There's Bermuda right there. The southwest winds around this coming up into the eastern part of the country. Almost a certainty of no white Christmas for most people east of the Mississippi, with the exception of extreme areas of New England, probably, maybe the White Mountains and the Green Mountains and the Adirondacks, maybe. And that might be pushing it, because it is going to be very warm and very tranquil as we head into the Christmas period, it looks like. Great for travel, not so great for the classic postcards showing Christmas snow and all that you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. It's not a picture postcard Christmas coming up for folks on the East Coast. So what can I say? Don't shoot the messenger. If you like cold and snow, you're not getting it this Christmas. All right, well, that's it for this weekly outlook at what's happening, things we look for in the tropics for next season, and then lower 48 weather. I do think once we get into the new year, and I mean, doesn't take a genius to figure this out, eventually the pattern will shift. Cold air will come into the United States with a vengeance, especially to the east, and we will get into a much more stormy pattern. But between now and that happening, it looks rather calm and warm. So enjoy it. All right? Again, I'm Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. As always, thanks for tuning in. I do these off-season discussions once per week. And that being said, I'll talk to you again next week.